Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Truther Therapy Sessions. I know I haven't labelled this one as so, but the title is very long if I add that in as well. So I'm gonna leave it as it is right now, so you know that it's Vicky talking with us today. And yeah, guys, we're gonna have a chill back and forth. We're gonna have a fun conversation about something that Vicky says she likes to talk about, and that's technologies, herbs, music, and new ways to connect to the spirit realm, which are being kind of pushed on the youth these days and new generations. It's no longer shamans and tripping balls. Now all you have to do is put a headset on and take some herbs, and you can activate your pineal gland to its full potential, it seems. And Vicky's going to join me today, and we're going to have a fun back and forth and conversation about that. But let's remember, guys, this is a Truth or Therapy session, so maybe we can get a bit personal. Hey, maybe we can find out a bit about Vicky's past, where she comes from, and how she got into being a crazy conspiracy theorist like the rest of us. So, Vicky, how are we doing? Yeah, it's great to have you back. It's been a few months, hasn't it? I think the last time we talked, it was about the what does the spirit realm look like exactly, or what is it? How does it work? Yeah. I think we had a quite good back and forth, didn't we? I think it was pretty fun.
It was great.
It was a good time, and this is and people have been messaging me saying, you know what, you've got to get it back. What an insightful young lady that was. I get quite a lot of that as well, and
Oh, wow. Well, Paul, every time I'm on a podcast, I'll say to people, have you had Paul on yet? You've got to have Paul on. I'm your publicist behind the scenes.
it seems that way. Yeah, I've actually got quite a few requests coming through. Yeah, from podcasters saying you were recommending me, so I do have to thank you for that, especially. Yeah, that's been great. I think Bo was one of the people you suggested me to
Yes.
from the bump.
Love
Yeah,
him.
he's
Yes.
he's joining me on this podcast that you're on right now next Sunday. So I'm gonna
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah. So the networking's been going strong since our previous conversations.
Yes.
And yeah, the channel's been growing exponentially, which is great. The Nephilim clown stuff has really snowballed,
It's,
and
I
spread.
love it.
Yeah, and right now I'm diving into I'm branching out into other topics because I don't like to be a one trick pony, and I'm kind of excited today to talk with you actually because it's been a while since I've touched on the spirit realm and spiritual warfare stuff. So I'm glad to have you here so we can have a bit of a change of pace on the channel. I've been swimming in preterism for like a week and for a month. It's been.
Oh, yeah.
I
That's pretty heavy.
yeah, it is heavy. Yeah, so I thought it was time to come back out and go into a different deep pool over in a different place. I'm not saying we're getting shallow here, but I think it's time to change the pace a little bit. So tell me, Vicky, what have you been up to lately? How's the book promotions going? You've been traveling around, I see.
Yeah, it's been going great. I never could have foreseen this, Paul. You know, when the book first came out, L.A. Marzulli, who published the book, he said, "Okay, Vic, we're gonna start out. We'll do like one podcast a week for like 3 months." And I'm like, "Okay." Yeah, I'm pretty introverted, so I was like, "Okay, I can handle that." And holy cow, here we are, like 18 to 20 months later, and I can't even keep up with with the invitations, which I love. I have met some of the coolest, most wonderful people through this experience. So yeah, it's been going, and I'm like you. I also don't want to be a one-trick pony, so I'm working on a couple other projects that probably sort of fall under the basic fringe umbrella, but not every single thing I talk about is necessarily sleep paralysis or entities or spiritual warfare, etc. But another thing that I really have an interest in, and on top of talking about the Bible, is technology. And I love technology, and I have been a tech-loving, American since the 80s. I remember when the first Apple Macintosh came out. No one had ever seen a mouse before.
Mm-hmm.
We were at the store like the day that thing came out, looking at that, and the day the CD-ROMs came out, and we have always had our little Blackberries, and my dad's been a techie guy, and so I'm not a Luddite by any means. I love technology. Obviously, we're doing this podcast right now. We've got our cell phones, but we are coming to a juncture now where our technology is becoming spiritual, and it's becoming integrated with human DNA. We're moving towards singularity. We're moving towards transhumanist kind of things. We're moving now into technology that in its first generation looks very cool and helpful. But as it moves into second, third, fourth gen, it's going to become more integrated with the human brain, with the human DNA. And are we getting to the precipice where our technology is going to change who we are as human beings? That is where my interest lies. Specifically, how this crosses over into the research that I've already done with sleep paralysis and entities and astral realm, etc., is specifically, is this technology that's being presented to the public as entertainment or communication tools or innovation, is there a very intentional but hidden purpose behind this technology, that what it's really doing is thinning the veil, and these experiences that people have had throughout time in altered states of consciousness, are these now going to be experiences that we have every day during the waking hours, because the technology has been developed to thin that veil and bring Gen 6 back? Are we going to be once again interacting with the cosmic realm?
Yeah, heavy stuff. I mean, I'm there with you. I grew up alongside technology as well. I remember many a night staying up with my friends, trying to take a box tower computer apart, replacing the RAM and messing with all the hard drives in there and everything, just to get the thing to work for another month, hopefully, because it's running it incredibly slow. I remember dial-up modems as well and all the rest. But, and
yes.
But the thing is, we in that generation were in an interesting time for technology, because we kind of grew with it to become what it is today. And I know every generation will say that, but I'm saying, we saw the block phone with an antenna develop into the shiny black mirror in our pockets, as though it was growing with us at the same age, It was
Yes.
I got my first phone when I was 11 years old, and it was a block Motorola with a pull-up antenna, and you could only literally put numbers into it,
Yep.
And I think my only two contacts were my mum and my dad. But from there, I went through it all. I went through the Nokias, the Motorolas, the Blackberries, what was the name for those type of phones? A BlackBerry. They had a specific name, didn't they? Like a PDA type thing, wasn't it? Was that the name?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a stretch. It wasn't even that long ago, and we're already so far beyond it we can't even remember. But yeah, I remember like all the StarTAC. Like, remember the first time the little flip phone came out, and it was so Star Trek, and it was so life imitating art, and it was really exciting back then to think like, okay, cool, I've got this device in my car if I get lost or if I get a flat tire. And if only we had known what that little convenience item was going to turn into. Now, I've tried a couple times to go back in time and just revert back to a little flip phone. And I don't know how we did it for 40 years, because if you have a job or you have a life, you cannot function without one of these things anymore. It's amazing the corner we've painted ourselves into.
No, I agree. That's the thing. Even though because we grew with it, in a sense, it was a symbiotic relationship. It grew with us. It adapted to our needs along with us in real time, and it's now become like a personal assistant / parasite that requires us to keep it alive continuously by plugging it in. You know what I mean? And our continuous use is what makes it develop and become more and more sophisticated, I suppose. And in a way, what we're seeing now from that rudimentary technology is now the development of not physical progress necessarily in technology. I think we're reaching a relative apex with that, because phones have stayed pretty much the same since 2012, I would say. They've only minor embellishments or In some cases, some of the next iterations have gotten worse, like taking away headphone plugs, for
Yep.
example, before having to bring
Amen.
them back. I think
Preach.
I think now what they're playing with is the software, isn't it? The AI element to all of this.
Yes.
And I still feel like it's very much in its infancy,
Yeah.
which actually scares me because even in its infancy, it's incredibly powerful and complex.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this in the past, but I was theorizing that AI is hand in hand with the transhumanist agenda.
Yes.
I feel like it's the testing of individual neurons to build a synthetic holographic brain of some type,
Yeah.
which can house consciousness. I think that's what the whole point of it is. I mean, do you want to just expound upon that and maybe have a bit of a back and forth
Yeah.
what you think about all
I,
that?
I completely agree. And I'm not quite sure this early in the conversation if it's even that AI is at one point going to become sentient, so much as at what point is AI going to simulate cosmic entities to such a more and more realistic degree that at some point it's not that the AI becomes sentient, but that the sentient beings take the place of the AI so seamlessly that we don't even recognize that it has moved from technology to an actual corporeal being. That's kind of what I'm wondering. And by way of AI, as well as the D-Wave quantum computers, they are marketing it to the public like it's this big, we're just getting our toes into the shallow end of the pool and we're trying to figure this stuff out. And we know this. We know this from the internet and from cell phones and other technologies. We are always, as consumers, probably anywhere from 50 to 75 years behind the curve of where technology really is. The upper crust knows about it before we do. The military knows about it before we do. And it's always released to us initially as convenience or entertainment. We don't often have, I think that we need to hone our skills as a race to maybe spending a little bit more time with the law of unintended consequences. It's kind of this business philosophy where when we innovate, we think of these great ideas and, we don't necessarily think of how those great ideas will look in nefarious hands, and we can go to the classic example of Einstein, the pacifist, creating nuclear fission. And that didn't go the way he probably envisioned it, or maybe it did, because, who knows who's telling the truth. But I think that this AI technology and this quantum computing is way further down the track than we think. And we've got Elon Musk and these thralls online that are trying to look like they're on our side, and we must stop this now while we can. The robots will take over and all this stuff. But they know even better than we do. This lion is so far out of the cage and down the path and deep into the jungle that we will never get it back in the cage again at this point. It is already too late to undo this unless there is some sort of global reset, like some flood / Tower of Babel situation where God comes down and says, okay, we're starting over. And the technology is lost once again and we have to start from scratch. Unless the Lord is going to do that again, we are not at a place at this stage where the lion is getting put back in the cage.
No, it's really sad that I mean, quote unquote scientists. I don't want to lump everybody into one category there. I understand we're all humans, but it's like why does nobody listen to these really profound and simple cliches? Because I think they're a cliche for a reason. It's that whole the road to hell is paved with good intentions. What else do we have? There's another one there somewhere that I can't remember what it is off the top of my head now. But you know what I'm saying? It's pretty obvious. You don't mess with these things. They always get out of hand pretty quickly.
Yes.
Yes. Like I said, once the lid's off, you can't put this back in. It's one of those type of situations, and it's a playing God situation I find as well. I think a lot of this is rooted in either blind ignorance, like I said, just the pursuit of progress for progress' sake, not really thinking about the consequences. I mean, you get these characters like Elon Musk, as you mentioned earlier, coming out of one side of his mouth, he is saying things like, we're in danger of AI here, this is serious, we could be in danger here, we're basically unlocking the demon with this thing, we're summoning the demon. And then out the other side of his mouth, he's drilling holes in people's skulls and attaching some kind of Neuralink to them, you know what I mean? It's kind of, is that right, Elon? You're our savior, are you? Thank you so much for listening to your own advice there. It's just, you know what I mean? It's just silly, isn't it? It's like, listen, just pay attention to the cliches, please, and just follow the simple advice and stop playing God. Maybe we'd be okay.
Well, and this really does tie in, Paul, with where the conversation is headed, because what the Musks of the world are trying to convince us of is, hey, because we've opened Pandora's box, this technology is going to supersede us in knowledge and power. And so the only way we can compete or survive is to upgrade. And so now this is survival. This isn't, about convenience or innovation or entertainment anymore. This is survival. We got to outsmart the machines. But what we have to really evaluate, and this goes back to what I was saying about sentience, is these computers are being programmed and developed and invented by human beings. And we're not God. We can't create something more powerful than we are. We can't create something more knowledgeable than we are. And so what they're banking on is, at some point, the reason why this stuff is going to take over is because it's going to become sentient. And so the questions we have to start asking is, what do we really mean by that? Do we mean it in the science fiction realm of that all of these zeros and ones, or these, qubits, and whatever else is invented in the binary code? Are you literally saying that at some point binary code is going to find a way to breathe life into itself and turn silicon into man like God? Or are we saying that at some point something with sentience takes it over? Because we all know that a computer isn't all of a sudden going to become human. So what do we even mean when we say this AI is going to go sentient? I really think that we need to stop just throwing around these buzzwords because they sound really cool. We've got like this quantum language now that makes everybody, no matter how dumb you are, sound really super smart. We can throw out all these terms, about quantum entanglement and time travel and all this stuff. But the fact is, we got to start with defining our terms. If Musk believes that we have to upgrade ourselves so that we can outwit the sentient binary encoded computers, what is actually happening? We know that human beings went from earth material, soil. We turned from clay to human when a spirit being breathed life into us, and that animated us. So if the enemy, who's always mimicking God and mocking God and copying God, because he doesn't have any original thoughts and he doesn't have the power to create, at what point is that creation going to happen? At what point is the breath of the enemy going to be breathed into the silicon, this material of earth that we've used to create something that is inanimate? At what point is the breath of life going to be breathed into the silicon, and that creation of the enemy is going to become sentient? That's the question we really have to start taking seriously. We have to kind of get out of our Star Trek, Hollywoodized versions of this, and all of our iRobots and Minority Reports, and we have all of these kind of romanticized pictures in our head of, the Tom Cruises and the Will Smiths running around, fighting the man, right? But what is that really going to look like? Because we have to prepare ourselves for what is inevitable unless God comes in and stops this.
Well, I think it'll look a lot more sad than we think it's going to look. I don't think it'll be quite as action packed with explosions and robots fighting everywhere. I think it will look a lot more like us locking ourselves into more isolation
Hmm.
as subtle AIs run things in a way we can't see or understand.
Yes.
And our influences us to make decisions we don't even understand that are being influenced. I think it's gonna be more like going out with a fizzle and a whimper rather than a bang.
Yes.
And while we're looking for the big thing, the Skynet event, it's not
Yes.
it's not gonna
Yes.
look like that. I agree with you. I really do. And this thing, we have been asking these questions, I feel like people think we're in the realms of fantasy sometimes with our
Yeah.
speculations, and I really think it's the other way around. And again,
Yeah.
I think it's the other quote. I think I remembered it earlier. It's that typical cliche. For all the times they were asking themselves if they could do it, they never bothered to ask if they should.
Yeah.
It's another one of those cliches again that I don't really think the people doing this. I think the majority of them don't understand or even consider that there is such a consequence, because they don't even believe a spiritual realm exists. They don't
Yeah.
understand that there's a biblical history to explain that there are spiritual entities on the other side of a veil, as we call it,
Yes.
just itching to get a body again.
Yeah, absolutely.
It,
Absolutely. Well, I loved what you just said, and I want to kind of compound on that, Paul, when you said it's really going to be isolation. Because interestingly, as I've been researching these new Apple Vision Pro goggles that are set to release next year to the general public at $3,500 a pop, by the way.
mm,
Um, these things, I was on the website where they were promoting all of the bells and whistles, and they kept showing these pictures of people wearing these goggles who are, apparently watching movies or going through their photos or whatever, but all of them are just sitting alone. These are the promo pictures. They're sitting alone on their couch with these goggles on, with just they're just like in their own little world. And even in the pictures, and I understand marketing and advertisement, you don't want a bunch of distracting things in the photo that aren't necessary to the product you're selling, but it's always a picture of a human being all by themselves in a room, just sitting there on the couch with these
mhm,
goggles on. And you don't see a dog, you don't see, like, there's no fellowship going on, there's no other, it's not like let's use these goggles collectively, like let's Bluetooth it together and all watch this together. It really struck me when you said isolation, and I do think that a huge part of the success of this entire agenda is going to be getting people to go further and further and further into themselves and become more um, almost afraid of the outside world. And we're even seeing this with the younger generations. When you and I were kids, we were out on our bikes outside all day, and we were upset when mom called us in,
mm,
and so we're already seeing this. We're seeing the malls, the shopping malls over here are dead. Like, the only people in a shopping mall are old people that are walking it for exercise, and
mm.
this whole social structure. And this is another part of breaking down humanity and turning them into something more robotic, is we're losing the ability to even fellowship with each other. And we all know the cliche where you're sitting in a room and there's 5 kids sitting on the couch next to each other and they're all texting each other, right? But
Mhm.
I've seen it happen. It's literally what's happening. And so I really think that you're onto something with this technology is going to break down social uh, social maturity, relational maturity, and it's really interesting. I've read a lot of books on the effect of trauma on the brain, and it talks about how the effect of trauma on the brain is that a person will become more and more isolated, and they categorize highly traumatized people into 3 ages of relational maturity. So it's kind of like an arrested development sort of thing. So depending upon how traumatized you were, you will get stunted at a certain level of relational maturity. So you might be 40 years old, but you respond to conflict like a 3-year-old, or you respond to conflict like a 10-year-old. And I'm seeing that even our technology is almost mimicking in the brain uh, what trauma does. And I think that a lot of our technology, even though it appears to be fun and interesting and enthralling and entertaining and opening up this whole world to us, and we can talk to people around the world, like you and I in another generation never would have met. So I mean, there's good things to it, but it is subtly affecting our brains in the same way that trauma affects our brain.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, there's an addiction side to it as well, which also affects
Yes.
the brain. There's a reward, endorphin release reward mechanism built into almost every single part of these devices, which keeps you hooked and addicted to them. And in terms of the trauma as well, I mean, you must know as well as I do what people behind a keyboard with anonymity can turn into. Absolute demons, monsters who wouldn't even dream of speaking the way they do in real life to you and to your face.
Yes.
But they can get cruel and cut as deep and as vicious as they possibly can, and I kind of have a thick skin because I've been doing this for years now, and it's kind of I don't think I've had much trauma which has stunted my ability to deal with conflict, but I do see these affect people in drastic ways, and it can lead to suicide. It's sad, but it does lead to that. And I have family members, right now who's dealing with some kind of cyberbullying thing, all to do with the phones,
Mm-hmm.
and I listened to the situation and I realized none of this would exist without the phone. This wouldn't be an issue, and kids would just be kids and it would have moved on already. But I see it a lot. The isolation is a huge part of it, like you said, and we know these satanic ritual abuse victims. This is what they do. They cause trauma in people's lives, to fracture their minds in order to create altars, and it's mind control at the end of the day. And trauma is a huge part of mind control techniques, and this technology is just such a powerful tool for that. I mean, just backpedaling a little bit, you were talking earlier about how Elon Musk says the only way to combat the advancement of technology is to get more advanced with our technology. It sounds to me like a secular way of talking about we need to use good magic to fight the bad magic. It's the same language, isn't it? We're the good magicians. We're the Jedi fighting against the evil Sith. It's always this utterly false dichotomy that they're playing off of, and so and characters like Elon Musk are like the secular hero, the secular Jedi, or the scientific mind version of the good magician of Harry Potter, let's say, against Voldemort or something, the chosen one. It's always there, and I don't know. When I see these narratives play out in front of me on the screen, I can't help but laugh a little bit, because I can kind of, it's childish, and it makes you wonder at what level mentally people are processing reality if they're buying this stuff, if they're actually buying this crap. You know what I mean? It's kind of like they must be looking at the world like they are a 10-year-old in the theater watching Star Wars for the first time. They must literally feel that passionate about these characters they've been given on such a stunted developmental way. And you see it in other things. It's not just arrested development is a huge issue for millennials and maybe not Gen Z. I'm not totally sure. I think they may be going a bit the other way. I'm not 100%, but I definitely see it in the millennial generation. There's this obsession with childish things. Let's say Comic-Con and anime and things like that, and this regression to want to remain as childlike as possible for as long as possible. And I'm sure there's a quote somewhere in the Bible. Somewhere in the Bible is, when you become an adult, you put aside childish things. I think there's a good reason for that, And I'm rambling. I'll let you carry on and share anything else you've got to say about that. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I love kind of the philosophical direction this conversation is taking, because there is a component of arrested development in this technology, and some of it's just, it taps into our nostalgia. Like we now have the ability to go back and watch the shows that were on when we were kids and stuff, and so some of it is like it appeals to the nostalgia. But I kind of coupling this with what you were saying earlier, I'm really glad that you brought up the trauma-based mind control. And so when we think about MK Ultra, or we think of satanic ritual abuse, we are getting to a place now, I think we're already there. It's not as aggressive, but gone are the days where you have to be in an underground military base or in, a double basement of a satanic coven's, jump space, right? What we've got now is through technology and through the way these technologies can tap into our altered states of consciousness or brain entrainment or through, these various technologies that they have, which we can go into detail about, we can now mind control people without having to have them in the laboratory. In the old days, you had to abduct the people and bring them on the little UFO. You had to pull people into the astral realm through sleep paralysis. You had to be in the military family. You had to be in the coven. You had to have access, hands-on access to people to trauma-based mind control them. And the technology that we've got out there now, between brain entrainment and the use of frequencies, these pineal gland pills and supplements, voice to skull technology, 5G probably, chemtrails, all the Wi-Fi, the AI. There are so many things at their fingertips now where they can switch us into meditative mode while we're wide awake. You don't need the super expensive, trip to South America for the ayahuasca, trip. You don't need the psychedelics. You don't need the new age education. Just with a pair of earbuds, you can sit in your room, and a lot of these things that used to have to happen in the astral realm can happen in broad daylight, wide awake. You don't even have to be in a sleep state or a drug-induced state anymore. And you talked about that kind of at the top of the show. And that's kind of what I'm interested in is educating people that we have to start having some discernment as to what technologies we are going to participate in, what stuff we're going to have in our home. A lot of this stuff is being specifically designed to thin the veil so that they have access to all of us 24/7. And if you've got voice to skull technology, this is a two-way radio. This isn't just that they're planting words and messages in our mind. It's a retrieval mechanism as well. And when you think about how frail the human mind is, and you add to it the stress of life, everything that we're all dealing with on a daily basis, financial issues, marriage issues, relationship issues, kids, jobs, you look at how easily influenced we are. Look how psychologically prone we are to marketing and advertising techniques, and suggestibility, et cetera, et cetera. So if all of a sudden you have a serpent-like voice in your head all day long, and you're no longer even recognizing this as an intrusive thought, because you are used to interacting with technology every day that does speak to you and interact with you. Right now, it's just algorithms. Hey, I see that you've read all the Harry Potter books. Here's an advertisement for a Harry Potter t-shirt. Like right now, we just chalk everything off to algorithms. And well, the reason that they know what I'm thinking is because they can look at my phone, they can look at my texts, they can look at my internet searches. But again, I ask the question, at what point when those algorithms are seamlessly exchanged for sentient beings who are interacting with us, FaceTime with these things, at what point are we going to know that the technology has been swapped out for actual sentient beings? And we're no longer talking to Siri or Alexa, but we're actually talking to Baal and Molech. At what point, without the word of God, without walking daily with the Lord, without the word, without truth, at what point, even Christians, are you confident that you're going to understand and recognize when algorithms have been swapped for sentience? Because our algorithms are so sophisticated, and they're only going to get more sophisticated.
But this is a true spiritual manifest into physical event we're kind of witnessing here, isn't it? Because like I said, in the past, you did have to do the shamanistic ritual,
Yes.
or whatever it is,
Yes.
or do the summoning ritual of some kind, take the drug, put in the work, learn the knowledge, you know what I mean, activate your
Yes.
pineal gland, whatever it is, or get into the theta brainwave state during, or get into that just before you're about to fall asleep, master your dreamscapes, you know what I mean, learn how to have out-of-body experiences. You had to do all these things, and it was very much us trying to get into the spiritual, or to get a glimpse of the spiritual, to communicate with these beings. This is kind of the reverse of this. And don't get me wrong, I do believe demons have manifested to people in ignorance and have always presented themselves as something they are not. We're aliens from the Pleiades constellation, for example. You know, we're ascended masters from the future, come back to teach you how to become like us. There's probably thousands of examples here I can give. Then the point is, they always come with a different message to individuals based on what they think they're going to best respond to. But they always have the same message. You are a god. God isn't real. Jesus is just a form of consciousness, and we all have the potential to become Jesus. The usual serpent in the garden stuff. You know, the message has never really changed. And I don't see this as a different event necessarily. This is now the demons manifesting to us, saying, "I'm just your AI assistant." It's the same way of getting us to interact with them and communicate with them and feed the beast in that sense. Give them our attention, our energy. That's all they've ever really been after. You know, they loosh off this stuff. They grow stronger the more attention we give them. The veil thins the more we create a stronger channel with them. That's what channeling's all about, you know, and the stronger you can make the channel, the stronger the connection to the being, the more easily they can possess or oppress or get into our realm. Because at the end of the day, they're not supposed to be here. You know, there's a veil put in place for a good reason by God himself to make sure that we're safe from them, because these things they still cause serious offences and do anything they can to get a body and kill us in the process, you know. And I do truly see all of this as just it's their turn to get to us instead of us trying to get to them. Then the way they're going to do it is it's going to be through code, ethereal means that to us we've convinced ourselves are binary means, you know. It's just ones and zeros. But do we really know what we're playing with? Because someone mentioned to me the other day, you know, this is very much what happened when everything switched from analog to digital. This was a very serious change in reality, you know, and Satan, they call him the prince of the power of the air, you know, and maybe I'll stop there now and let you respond. I said a lot of things there, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is great. You've articulated so many of the things I've been thinking with, and just worded it so carefully and so beautifully. And going back to what you were saying about, you know, in the old days, you know, you had to go find these gurus, you had to, you know, be trained in all of this transcendental meditation and all of this stuff. You really had to go out of your way and have a lot of arcane knowledge to be one of the chosen one. And what a lot of that stuff is it is your signing of the permission slip. Hey man, you know, this is what the Watchers are saying now. Like, hey God, you can't hold me accountable and throw me in the abyss. I didn't leave my first estate and come down and teach arcane knowledge to man. They came to me. They learned this stuff. They took that psychedelic. And so see how they're shifting the accountability? It's like they think that they're going to get away with it. We learned from the first generation Watchers, if we leave our first estate and we go down to them and share the mysteries of heaven, we're going to get locked in the abyss. We're going to be judged. We're going to lose our souls. So we still have an agenda. We still have a job to do. We still have to teach them all of this arcane knowledge and tell them that they're star seeds and that they're going to be like God and all this. But we will get in trouble if we come to them. So let's lure them up here. Let's let them leave their first estate and get in trouble. But then we can still carry on our agenda. And so what's scary about where we're headed now is the invitation the signing of the permission slip, which used to be extremely complicated, and you had to be in the club and you had to be really knowledgeable in the area of psychedelics or out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, astral projection. You had to really be going out of your way, doing things to very obviously be giving that invitation. Whereas now, what do we do in our ignorance when things are being peddled to us as games, apps, objects of convenience? At what point does this become the invitation? I went out and I bought the VR headset and I stuck it on and I chose to view the world through these manufactured lenses. At what point is buying a cell phone in case you get a flat tire turning into, quite frankly, to go all the way off the cliff, Paul, in antiquity, they worshipped the black stones. And many people believed those black stones were sentient. They were put in the temples, they were put in the courts, and they were divination devices. And these black stones were meteorites. Like Diana, it says in the New Testament that Diana was the god that fell from the sky. And if you actually look into that stone, it was a meteor stone. And when you really delve into what powers our technology, the silicon and the various elements that are making up these AI chips, at what point has the enemy tricked an extremely civilized, educated generation to revert back to worshiping the black stones?
Well, I think they've practically already done that, like you said, because it's subtle this time. We don't see the stone because it's been turned into a complex arrangement of nodules on a sand created chip. You know what I mean? It's a more sophisticated what's the word, arrangement of the stone than what they used to be. You know, and I agree with you. I think again, people like us people who are listening now, we've already realized that this was the case, and we're already extremely skeptical about our use of technology. And we're watching with tentative eyes to see how they're going to fulfill their agendas, because we know there's a transhumanist agenda at play. There's the agenda, so-called, for immortality through the use of technology, which again is the same lie from the Garden of Eden, and the promised means for those developing it with the money and the resources is that they will get to live forever. But I don't believe they'll get that option. You know, I do believe it's going to the Nephilim to be able to return once more, just as it was in the days of Noah type of situation. That's what we're actually seeing with all the development of this technology. It's not for us. We're just the means to an end to get the technology to exist. They just need us to build it. So they need us to test it, you know, to make sure it works, to troubleshoot, you know, and it's not like we're building our own cage necessarily, but we're building a new Stargate.
Yes.
We're building a portal of some kind. And we don't quite understand that that's what we're doing. And like I said, I think the way I've described it in the past is possession of a human body is messy. It's not optimal. The demon doesn't get full control necessarily because it has to fight with another consciousness in the vessel. And those pesky humans at any moment can get filled with the Holy Spirit and they get evicted, you know. It's not exactly an ideal situation for the Nephilim. But if they can create a vessel that can't house the Holy Spirit and that has no conscience in it to begin with, but instead has been created that it has the ability to house consciousness like a human body, so it has all the advanced technology necessary to mimic a brain, like we were alluding to earlier, then they can slip into that, and that's a much more optimal situation. So I think a lot of people, imagining the return of the Nephilim are like, oh, well, giants are going to be around again. And it's like, no, it's the robot overlord situation. It's the same consciousness behind them, the same spirits behind them, just with the new skin. And many won't even know that that's what's happened. They won't understand, like you said, when will they know that there's been a change from Siri AI algorithms to a real ancient consciousness of sorts that's taken its opportunity to squat in this new vessel. I think even us, even Christians, would struggle to notice the swap, and it wouldn't be immediate. Because why would they? They continue, just as they have done for thousands of years, to pretend to be something they're not. They would easily fit that. And it's one example. I think it's good to use video games as an example, because I think a lot of listeners can relate to these things more so, especially the younger listeners. But there was actually a game that was created quite a long time ago now. I think it was maybe 2014, 13 period. I guess it was an old game by today's standards. But it was called The Observer. And it actually laid out a good example of the type of world we would live in if AI had taken control, basically, and humanity did integrate themselves with technology. It was a Polish game, and something about Polish developers, they're very, very dark with the way they represent things. They're very dry. And there was no, it was a warning. You could tell this was a warning. This was created saying, it's not going to be flashy in any way, shape, or form. It's going to be dark, drab, miserable, and cold. And it was, as you were saying earlier, these people wearing these headsets. When you can see what they're seeing, it's like, wow, so much going on, all these colours, these screens everywhere, but when then you actually just zoom out and watch what's actually happening, it's this sad, lonely individual in a room on their own, waving their arms in the air, looking silly. You know what I mean? And they kind of show that in this game, that everything's augmented. Everything's got all the humans in that world have integrated with technology thoroughly. The wires run through their veins, but they're still human. It's still like a fleshly technological mix. You know what I mean? Kind of like a Borg-like situation, but a bit more subtle. And so no matter what you do, advertisements are just laid over everything, on every surface and every wall, but they're not. It's not actually there. Do you get what I mean? It's just it's just an augmented reality, and they can make really horrible, run-down, decrepit, decaying buildings look lovely. And that's kind of what they do, to hide a decaying world where humans are living in squalor. All humans only perceive in this reality a nice overlay over everything to make it look pristine and clean and wonderful, And the main character who you play is a detective for the police who's going to investigate a possible homicide or murder. So you end up going through an apartment building full of people and investigating and talking to people, and it's like a showcase of the insanity of technology to that level on people's minds, and you see different characters throughout. And it turns out, anyway, spoiler alerts, your son, you find your son's body, because it's his apartment building, okay, and he's been decapitated, he's dead. And you go on to find out that he basically tried to transfer his consciousness into a computer. That was the end goal. And it turns out, in the end, you think you've been speaking to your son's consciousness, but it was actually AI pretending to be your son the entire time. And it was all of it was an illusion, and the AI had basically just taken over his life and murdered him and tried to replace him it gets really complicated, but everything in that was basically a modern day showcase of it going out with a whimper. Humanity would just fizzle, it wouldn't be that big major invasion event that we'd imagine, it would really just be a sad, decaying, lonely world for everybody, all isolated from one another. And desperately attempting, like I said, like this young boy trying to get immortality, but it's just a fraud. The AI never intended to allow him to be immortal. It was just a lie, it just murdered him basically, and assumed his identity for its own purposes. But yeah, another interesting one about that, which I think is actually quite relevant, because don't forget, there's always the agenda to depopulate with these satanic scumbags that kind of lord over us. And in this game, there was this disease called the autophagy, which is a play on the word autophagy, which is where the human body replenishes and dying cells with new cells after you fast for long enough. It's called autophagy. But there's basically this disease in this realm called the autophage. It's basically a disease people who've integrated with technology eventually end up getting. And it's like the body fighting the alien technology within it. And you have to take this pill continuously to stay alive.
Oh my goodness.
And people who can't afford the pill obviously die. But it's an interesting mechanic in the game that you can not take the pill. And you can begin to see the reality for what it truly is, if you get what I mean. And apparently in this fictional reality, there was a huge war because of all of this, and I think it's like 3/4 of the population of the Earth was wiped out because of the autophage. It was like utterly destroyed, and then so again, there's the population's reduced. Everyone's isolated in their pods, all hooked up to augmented reality, living isolated lives from one another. And that game came out 10 years ago, and it seems like fiction then, to the extreme, but I feel like that's probably very, very, very close to something likely what it's going to look like if we keep going to its inevitable conclusions. Yeah, I'll let you go now. I've talked for a while there.
Well, that is super, super fascinating, and they do just give away so much. If to quote Bono, where fact is fiction and TV is a reality, right? From Sunday, but it really is true, and I think that's one of the ways that they have succeeded in their mind control campaign, is that we have these two categories as human beings where we believe that television is the nonfiction and the movies are the fiction, right? And in many ways, we're not really getting much truth at all on the news. And we're getting loaded with it in fiction. But where that becomes hard when you are awake is anytime you try to explain to someone where we're really at, they say, oh, I saw that movie. And because they have already categorized that event as something fictional, they cannot recategorize it. It's almost like we don't have the ability as human beings to take something and put it in the other category once we've decided where it goes. And what's really interesting about what you're saying about how their promise of eternal life is really a lie. It's a promise that they can't keep. I mean, even the serpent in the garden, he promised Adam and Eve that they would be as gods. And like they're still waiting for that promise to come true. They died, But what's interesting is you can be as gods is technically they're telling you the truth. Now, you can't be as Almighty God with a capital G, but if you go to Psalm 82, where Elohim, capital E, creator God, is speaking to the lowercase e Elohim gods, lowercase g gods. A lot of the English translations translate it differently because of the whole monotheism thing. We can't have God admitting that there's other gods, but there are. Now, it doesn't mean that they're the supreme God. They're created, but we learn the fate of the lower G gods in Psalm 82. He says that ultimately, even though you were once sons of God, you will die like men. So we understand from Psalm 82 that the ultimate fate of the gods is death. When those same gods come to us and say, you can be as a god, what they're saying in their trickery is, you're going to die with us. We know our fate. We've accepted our fate. We're going to bring you down with us. So if you, in your ignorant little narcissistic mind, want to think that being as a god means you're Superman or you have all these superpowers or you're wealthy and famous and rich, like if that's the way you want to interpret what living like a god is, that's on you. But I am a little G god, and guess what? I live a life of misery and self-loathing. The only thing that I can do to get any pleasure out of life is to destroy and kill and steal. I live at every moment knowing my fate. I am the sands are going through the hourglass, and when they run out, I'm going to die. That's what you're inheriting. When they say you can be as a god, it's not that they're lying to you. It's that they have a seriously different definition of what it means to hold that title of little g God. If you knew their existence and their standing in the cosmic order of things and their fate, if they came and offered you, hey, you can be like a god, you would run from it because you would understand as they do. Your eyes would be open. That was the whole outcome of the tree of knowledge. Their eyes were opened. Did it make them immortal and happy and joyful? No, it in their eyes opening, they saw death now and entropy, and the law of thermodynamics kicked in, and all of a sudden working in the garden was a toil and a hardship, and the marriage got difficult, and the sons were killing each other. So when we have our eyes opened, it doesn't mean this wonderful nirvana is going to be put upon us. And so I just want to just plead with anybody out there who is maybe buying into this lie. You're a chosen one. You're a star seed. You're from another planet. You are a ascended being of light from the brightest star, and you're here to help humanity. That kind of sales and marketing pitch appeals to people who are broken, who need an identity and a purpose. We all want an identity and a purpose. But if you want an identity and a purpose apart from Christ, you will be susceptible to the largest of lies. And you're putting your own soul in jeopardy. And Paul, as you just stated, in the end, the carpet is going to get ripped out from underneath you. They will not be able to fulfill any of these promises. And I just really have a heart for the people that are being lured in by these deceptions. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to feel special, if you want to feel chosen, if you want to feel like some huge cosmic eternal entity looks down and sees your name and has a plan for your life, Jesus offers all of that. Why is that less exciting than being a starseed? Honestly, why is that less exciting?
It's not. No, great message there, Vicky. I think people were really enjoying that in the chat from what I just saw there. But it's one of those messages that I kind of feel like a broken record, because I've been saying this on repeat for years now.
Mm-hmm.
But I am sadly seeing a growing movement of Gnosticism. New Age plus, shall we call it? I think the New Age spiel from the 2012s to the 2018 period isn't really cutting it for people anymore. Guardian angels, crystal power, chakra alignment stuff. It's not quite doing it now, and I feel like those initiates have decided to go to the next degree. And now they've delved into Gnostic thinking, demiurge type thinking, prison planet type thinking, becoming a god through alchemical principles, hermetic principles type thinking, feeling like they've gone a bit deeper, they've got a bit more smarter. I've grown up now, I'm mature, I've come out of that naive way of viewing reality, and now I know the real truth, that type of attitude.
Yes.
And they're all on their journey to finding Christ in the end, I believe. Not Christ consciousness. I mean, true Jesus Christ as a real person who existed, who is the Son of God, who isn't just a metaphor for the sun. They're going to get there eventually, but that is it's. I would say in the truther culture, it makes up maybe 55% of the truthers out there, of that mindset and of that interpretation. How they view everything that's happening around them. it's very much I'm the good musician. Sorry, the good musician, the good magician. Though there's much difference between a musician and a magician now I think about it. But they are the good magicians who are going to bring down the evil bad magicians. I do think a lot of people have fallen into that category of thinking right now. I don't know if you've noticed it, but Gnosticism is huge.
Yes.
I have to deal with it on a daily basis. I get called an idiot at least 20 times a day by these people who then go on to tell me the typical Gnostic spiel, which I've heard 1,000 times before, and which I myself was delving a little bit into before I found Christ in 2014. So I've been doing this longer than they have. But they're trying to tell me I'm a fool, I am stupid, I have fallen for their trap by believing in Christ, you know what I mean? And it's more than usual. It's growing.
It absolutely is. And, no servant is greater than his master. They hated me, they will hate you. And so, if there's any comfort in being called a fool, and, it's funny how they call, the elites call us useful idiots. And to some people I say, well, at least I'm useful.
Yeah.
But, interestingly, talking about where we are now in this point in time and the lenses that we're viewing reality through, like the very definition of reality is being reworked in our generation. And I have noted that a lot of modern Christians who aren't real well read and aren't going to strong biblically based churches and aren't really in the Word for themselves during the week, they are sort of inadvertently resorting to this, what I call Star Wars theology. There's a good guy and a bad guy, and they're going to duke it out with like lightsabers. And then there's this Yoda guy that, can help you when you pray. And, it's really, we've taken this Star Wars analogy and used it as an overlay for our trying to comprehend the uncomprehendable God. Right. And I don't really even look at it like, okay, there's God and then there's the devil. Like, I think of it in terms of, that scene in one of the Indiana Jones movies where he's got his knife, and then he's gonna duel with this one other guy with a sword, and then he turns around and there's like hundreds of guys with swords, right? And I think it's the same way. We think that there's like this one devil, but God has hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of adversaries in the cosmic realm. And he is this hero with the strong arm and the sword, conquering all of them. It's not this duality of the blue lightsaber and the red lightsaber, right? God is so much larger than our little comprehension of him and the devil playing chess, or him and the devil having like an arm wrestling match. This is silly. This is God against every single thing he's created, right? This is the ultimate, man versus man versus nature. This is God versus everything he created. And what's interesting about the time that we live in, well over 100 years ago, I believe it was maybe even over 200 years ago now, because I think it was in the 1800s, there was a rabbi, R. Hillel, and the Gaon of Vilna, who's kind of like the Kabbalistic guru. He quoted him, and he said that, bear in mind, this definition is hundreds of years old. The way that this Rabbi Hillel defined the end times, and don't think in terms of the Christian end times like Revelation and Armageddon. Think in terms of the Cabal, the organizers of the New World Order. That's their end times, right? Because they're going to usher in their new golden age. The four pillars that are supporting this New World Order, according to this rabbi, was Torah, Kabbalah, science, and technology. And this has been in their secret, archives. This is not something that was ever, you had to be a adept in Kabbalah to even know that formula up until now. And the very fact that everybody's willing to spill their secrets now, so much for the cross my heart and hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. Like now, the Masons are allowed to gatekeep and give a bunch of stuff away, and the Kabbalists are giving stuff away. They're giving stuff away because they feel like there's no stopping us now. We can flaunt it now. That's what they believe. But here now we're living in a time where the Torah is being taught again to Christians, and there is a huge upsurge in interest in the Hebraic roots of Christianity. We have got all sorts of Kabbalah being woven into New Age and Christian churches, and we know more about Kabbalah now than we've ever known before, thanks to Hollywood and Madonna and all their little red bracelets, etc. Right now, the deplorables are allowed in the club. Science, obviously, we've been on that wave for 100 years, 100 and more than that now. And then this technology. And so all four pillars are in place. And it is, in their eyes, an extremely stable foundation upon which to launch their new world order. And whether or not we're close to that time or not, Paul, the only reason why I can't, in my finitude, state emphatically whether we are close or not is that no one knows the day or the hour, which means the enemy is always in every generation preparing for this and ready for it and ready to launch it. But we've seen all throughout time and all throughout biblical history that there are times where they get very close and God stops them. He thwarts them. He kills off a people. He knocks the tower down. He confuses the language, or there's a revival. So we know as we look outside our doors at what's going on that the enemy is 100% poised and equipped and capable of putting this into practice at any moment. But what we don't know is if the sovereign hand of God is going to say, I choose the time, it's not this time, it's not this generation. That's the unknown.
It's interesting that you were talking about this 4-part mindset of Talmudic Judaism, Torah, Hebrew roots mixed with Kabbalah mysticism, and then also mixed with science and technology, in a sense.
Yes.
I mean, that's only one tentacle of the branch of Gnostic thinking and mystery school thinking, because there are many variants of that all over the earth from different angles, that all kind of come together under one umbrella religion. The new way, it's the new world religion,
Yes.
Fundamentally. And I do believe a lot, the secret societies, mainly Western secret societies, are heavily Kabbalist in nature. The mystery wisdoms are the Kabbalah mystery wisdoms, just kind of Christianized, under a false veil. And if you go a level above Freemasonry to Shriners, they've got the Middle Eastern mysticisms mixed in there from the Sufis and the Zoroastrian dualistic religions as well. And the levels just keep going up and up, and there's many variants and groups at all. But fundamentally, I don't think, even though the Gnostics would say otherwise, I don't think there's much distinction between what they believe. It's just a different skin to say it, to spread the same "you'll be as God's" type message. But I found it interesting, we're talking here about the integration of technology today, and to mix it and bring it full circle with these ideas of this growing movement of Kabbalistic Gnosticism, shall we say, Christ consciousness. Fundamentally, I was talking to somebody about this called Lloyd, and he basically broke down and explained it. I kind of already knew this, but it's basically a death cult. This is what Gnosticism really comes down to, because they believe that the creator God of the physical world is evil. They call him the demiurge, and they believe the more humans there are, the more watered down our consciousness is, therefore, because it's a collective consciousness, you see. And the fact that giving birth, for example, is bad for humanity. Babies are bad. The more humans we have, the weaker we are as a collective consciousness. If the consciousness is concentrated in fewer people, we're more godlike. That's literally what fundamentally the basics of how they view things. So they are all for killing, genocide, mass murder, abortions, all of these things we see happening in our modern world. They're all for that because they actually believe they're doing a good thing.
Yeah.
They actually
Yeah.
have that fundamental belief that they are saving humanity by killing us, by killing humanity. This is true.
Yeah.
And they don't really admit that. That's the higher level initiate stuff, But that's
Yes.
fundamentally, that's what their belief is based on. It's a death cult. That's why in the Georgia Guidestones we saw keep humanity under 500 million in perpetual
Yep.
balance with nature. That's what they were talking about. That's why they think it's justifiable to kill 8.5 billion people. Because they actually think that's the best interest for humanity. And never mind that, they also believe that man, or it's the wrong word for it, human or humanity shouldn't be dual gender. There should be. That was also a trick of the demiurge to turn us into male and female. We should be some kind of androgynous oneness image of some kind. We shouldn't be separated into two. That makes us weaker too. Do you get what I mean? We should be one whole. And so that's why you see the push for, androgynous things in today's society, trying to get around the algorithm here without getting, cancelled. But it's kind of, we can see it growing, this dehumanized, androgynous way of thinking mixed with this, death is a good thing way of thinking. There's a very profane way the masses have been given this ideology. They don't know they're giving into Gnostic worldviews. They think it's just science. It's the way it should be. It's the logical conclusions for humanity. There's too many people on the earth, that sort of thing. It's the green initiative, it's the carbon initiative. And that's how it gets sold to the public. But fundamentally, all of these movements are rooted in Gnostic thinking. So when I get these idiots coming to me on my channel telling me I need to start being more Gnostic with my thinking, and I'm so stupid for not seeing that it's all metaphorical and taking the Bible literally, I can't help but say to them, like, you're in a death cult. You are literally fueling the enemy you think you're fighting by perpetuating these ideologies. And they are the people who will, through alchemical, hermetical transmogrification, become like a god in a perfected body by going with the transhumanist agenda. Because why, if we're all consciousness, why not transfer our consciousness into a hive mind machine? Surely that's a perfected way of reaching the conclusion these Gnostics want to reach, right? We all become one collective humanity in perfected godlike bodies. Is that not what alchemy truly is? Its end goal at the end of the day, to turn things into gold, and that's a metaphor they're really going for there. It's not about actually creating gold. It's about purification and creating the God ourselves. That's what it really is all about. And I said a lot of things there. I'll let you just come back on that one. But,
it's ironic. I mean, if you really put it in perspective, when you look at people that are like, the keyboard warriors that are just sitting there, commenting on YouTube videos, statistically, if the leaders of your death cult are going to wipe out 8 million plus people, the chances of you being one of those 8 million is pretty high, because unless you're contributing to, on some massively high level. And so it's almost like it's sort of like these spiritual kamikazes, I'm gonna join this death cult, but I'm not really ever going to put two and two together that statistically, when 8 million people are wiped out, I'm probably going to be one of those people. Like this is like a almost a unwitting suicidal ideation, right? But it's fascinating to me too, because like I know a lot of believers in general aren't really well read biblically, but even if you picked up your Bible one time and decided you were going to read through it and you never got past Genesis 1, like if all you've done in your personal Christian walk is read the first chapter of the Bible, right there you would have enough information apologetically to knock down the Gnostic goals, because right there it says he created male and female did he create them, and he instructed them to be fruitful and multiply. So right there you have encoded in plain sight in Genesis 1 that God's intention for his creation was that there be a male and a female, and that they populate the earth. And there doesn't seem to be any sort of concern on behalf of God that, perhaps these people will take this too seriously and procreate too much, that command was never nullified. That's a command of God, and he never came forward and said, knock it off. We've got enough, So
well, they would say, you see, that is the deception. The God who said that is evil. And he has trapped us here by making us do that and making man and woman and telling us to multiply. That's the trap. Keeping us in the flesh in his world he's created, which isn't the true reality. They would say there's a God above that God of the Old Testament, who's the the grand architect of the universe, the consciousness, the source of all things, the great source. It's not it's a passive God, and it's not interested in the affairs of man necessarily. But this evil God, Yahweh, who created man and woman and the earth, was a flawed God. And that's why we live in a fallen world where there's evil, because the God who created us and trapped us here is a fallen, narcissistic, evil God. And even then, it goes above all of that, and there's a cosmic backstory to all of this, that the Sophia, the wisdom, and we are manifest that. So it's kind of, we are Sophia, or wisdom, trapped in this now dualistic form. And the story changes. It's a constantly shifting goalpost. No matter how I describe Gnosticism, it doesn't matter how I describe it, there's always somebody there in the comments section, smug with a grin on their face, saying that's not real Gnosticism. It's the communist rhetoric all over again. Because that's the problem. It is so subjective and ethereal. They believe knowledge comes through gnosis, through their own opinions and feelings on the matter. That's how they get to their knowledge. It was given to them, you know what I mean, through divine gnosis, through getting enough knowledge and information, basically, and divining the wisdom themselves through their own subjective interpretations. And the gnosis is king over established doctrine. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And you can't beat them. Like I said, you can use the Bible there to say, God clearly loves us. He's not got an issue with us. He wants us to multiply. But they would just come back at you and say, that's the evil God, and the people who wrote that are evil and are on his side and helping his evil agenda.
Sure. There's a point where you can't win. It's designed so that you can't. And it's very much like the Lovecraftian, the blind idiot God, the guy that sits up there that they don't want to wake up because, God forbid he start wanting to interact with his creation. And that it's also the very Kabbalistic, the Ein Sof, which is this female essence of God. Like they believe that God had this dualistic nature of male and female, and that when the fall occurred and this, veil was, this boundary was put up between heaven and earth, that the male essence of God rules the heavens and the female essence of God rules the earth. And that's the Ein Sof. And, there we see the Sophia, the wisdom, but it's this female essence. And of course, we know that when you trace that back, it's not the, it's not the God of the Bible. Now we're into the Queen of Heaven, et cetera, et cetera.
It's also a Luciferian doctrine, and the secret societies. Albert Pike made no secret that Lucifer is the pinnacle of their societal worldview, because again, it's pure Kabbalistic Gnosticism. They think Lucifer is the light bringer of knowledge, of gnosis, who through the gnosis of Lucifer, the light of Lucifer, we can free ourselves from the evil Adonai God prison that he's trapped us in. It's the same philosophy. Sophia is just a female version of Lucifer. It all comes under its knowledge. It's a symbol for knowledge, and they're a very metaphorical, symbolic bunch, the Gnostics, and this is why you can never beat them. They have no solid ground to stand on, and it's very much a pride-based belief system that plays on itching ears so they can feel special and smarter than everyone else. All these idiots out there don't see that this world is evil and a trap, all the while they're decaying, lonely in their miserable little box connected to their headsets, you know what I mean, and have no real life to live. Jesus came so that we can have life and live it abundantly, and actually have a life to live that's worth living. And you don't get to have a good life unless you actually see that, sadly, because you'll be swimming in your own projection of reality.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, Jesus Christ gives truth. The point is he helps you actually see reality for what it really is. That's the point of it. It's not to put you into a dogmatic box so you can't see outside of your perceptions anymore, and therefore you just become a church-going idiot who doesn't understand or think about anything greater than the dogma. I believe God created us in His image because He wants us to think and see and know the truth and understand how reality actually works. It's eye-opening. In fact, truly, it's better than what the serpent was offering. And that's the same again. It's the same game under a different name. The serpent's game. It's never changed, has it? And again, I think I'm rambling a little bit more there. I'll let you carry on.
No, this is great. It's just making me think of the verse that says that while we're here on planet Earth in our fallen bodies, we are seeing through a glass dimly. And so for those that offer a worldview that makes reality down here in our unresurrected state, if you're presenting me a worldview where reality is very, very clearly seen, then I know that's premature. Like, we are not going to have that veil lifted from our eyes, and we are going to see through a glass dimly as long as we're down here. There's things that are not yet going to be revealed. And I just think there's so much hubris in this idea that we are somehow going to be privy to every single piece of knowledge available in the universe. I don't even think that when we are in a glorified state that God has to or necessarily is going to reveal everything to us. Everybody always jokes about going to the information booth when they get to heaven, but some of the things that we ask, He might say, not going to tell you. I mean, there's examples of that in Scripture where people asked Jesus a question and He answered with another question, and they walked off and they didn't get an answer. And I hope there's always a mystery. I hope that 10 million years into eternity, I am still perplexed on some level by God. What fun is it going to be? Once a magician tells you all the tricks, it's ruined. It's ruined.
Absolutely. I've actually repeated the same message you're saying there many times, because I think there's like an attitude in the truther culture that we feel like we have to know it all. We must understand God's creation design perfectly. I think the Flat Earth movement might be a good example of that. There's this desire to understand God's creation thoroughly and to say that they have the perfect model, exactly what God's creation is. And I always go back to the idea, basically in Job, were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth? What do you know? Like, from your perspective, do you think you can even comprehend my creation? Like the intricacies and levels behind it, and I stand by that. I don't think we can possibly know just how psychedelically insane and complex the creation we live in actually is. We can measure it with our primitive tools as much as we want, but we'll never get a holistic image compared to from His perspective of what it is we're actually living within or on or under or whatever you want to say. And this is the thing, I'm actually okay with not knowing. And I think there's a lot of people who aren't. They cannot bear the thought of not knowing, and it's through that vanity of thinking they can know it all that creates the pride, which creates the sin, which creates the further problems down the line in their life, and I think we need to be humble enough to let go sometimes and know, I can't. There's some things I'm just not going to know until the end, and even then, may I still might not be able to fully understand it, but I might get a bit of a better perspective in the end, and again, God brings truth to people. It's not Lucifer the light bringer. It's I know people say like Lucifer was called the morning star. Why was Jesus also called the morning star? And I'm like, well, they were all sons of God. Lucifer may be a morning star, but Jesus is the morning star. He is actually the true bringer of truth and light and knowledge. If you just and he just knock and he'll give it to you, basically. No conditions, no strings attached. It's kind of Lucifer demands things of you. He demands the degrees. He demands sacrifice. He demands the work gets put in. It's a different way of doing it, And again, it feeds off pride. I think the issue people have with the Christian offer of knowledge what Christ is offering is that it just seems too easy. They want to be able to say they worked for it. They want to be able to say, I put in the time and the effort and learned all the right things and made all the right sigils and learned all the right mantras. And, you know, I learned so much that I deserve to have all this knowledge and insight and the truth. You know, what did you do? And it's that boastful, bragging attitude behind people, which is why they always go towards these mystery wisdom angles, towards learning the nature of reality and truth. But I've found when I gave myself over to Christ and was born again, it was just one truth after another, way beyond what I initially thought it was. You know, and it's like he gives you what you can handle when you can handle it, and he builds and layers things on top of it. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel like I worked for it. You know, it really does. It's kind of, it does feel like very undeserved in a way. Like, but I think that's by design, because it's so you don't feel pride from understanding and, you know, discernment and things like that. And I don't know, what do you think? And maybe we'll move on after this. We'll round off, but
yeah, you know, this whole concept of knowledge, you know, it's not lost on me that the whole world went to pot when we sought after knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And here we go. We eat from the tree of knowledge. Our eyes are opened. And a little further down the timeline, we have watchers coming down and revealing the mysteries of heaven. So we have all of this knowledge. And by the time we get to the end, Jesus says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So we haven't obtained it, even with all of our learning. And I think it was King Solomon who said of the reading of books, it's endless. And look at Solomon for all of his wisdom, right? And so knowledge versus wisdom, you know, and even, you know, how you're saying that we're called fools by the learned, you know, and God even says that he chooses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And so it's this bizarre dichotomy that, like, the more we know, really, that should be humbling, that the more we know. I mean, a lot of people, when they get to my age, they say, like, now I realize how much I don't know, and it doesn't matter how long I went to school. And what is so fascinating to me is we have this idea as human beings that the way to achieve complete and utter success is to become great. Now, whether that means you're financially rich, or you've got a fancy job title, or you've got tons of friends, or you drive a Tesla, or, you know, whatever, you've got 1 million subscribers on your YouTube channel. You know, we have all of these concepts that if we can become great in the eyes of other people, if we can feel big, that's going to fill this hole. That's going to make us get in touch with, you know, the reality of who we are in this universe. And what's so fascinating to me is it doesn't play out that way in nature or in reality. Like, I know that the times in life where I've come into the most authentic expression of who I am in this universe is when I feel very, very small. Like, so in other words, you're looking at the ocean, or I love, like, being in the redwood forest. I used to live out there, and I would go to the redwood forest all the time, and I would lose my breath. These trees are so beautiful, and the forest, it's dead quiet. It's just otherworldly. Or you're sitting like at the Grand Canyon, and I still remember one time I was in the redwood forest, and I heard a noise. And it was the strangest sound I'd ever heard. It sounded like a groaning. It was a loud groaning, and it was almost like paranormal. And I got out of my car to listen because the forest was groaning. And as I stood there, I saw a whole bunch of leaves and debris falling. And right before my eyes, one of these massive redwood trees fell to the ground, and the whole earth shook. And the other tree that it had separated from, this 200-foot tall tree, was waving back and forth. the one that was still standing, and debris was falling, and the 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 tree was literally like groaning as it was cracking apart. That was the sound. And pretty soon there was about a dozen of us who had stopped our cars and were watching this happen. And there was a woman there who was sobbing uncontrollably. And she said to me, I was contemplating suicide. I was going to kill myself. I thought there's no meaning to anything. And I can't explain it, Paul, but her seeing that massive redwood tree come down, I don't know if it was the timing of it or I don't know what it was, but it gave her a glimpse of her smallness. It gave her a glimpse of who she was. And I just think that it's fascinating that we're on the wrong track. We're buying this lie, and we spend our whole lives toiling to be big and great. And it's really the times in life when we feel the smallest in light of the things that have been created and put before us, that we really get a small taste of this reality, this elusive reality, right? So I just think that when you're talking about pride and hubris, like you're so right. It's like the bigger we become, I kind of think the more deviated from reality we become.
Mm-hmm. And a great story, by the way. And I can really appreciate being in nature giving you perspective, because the problem is that with technology, as we guess I kind of bringing it back to the point of all of this, people become great, let's say, as you're describing, and today that looks like having plenty of followers or enough likes or clicks and a presence and being an influencer. Let's say that's what it manifests as today. It's not necessarily being a CEO anymore or having a great career or with honors, you know what I mean, and a history. It's about having as many eyes on you as possible. It really is rooted in much more of a vanity-based version of greatness, how many people are looking at me sort of thing. But the problem is that what that actually looks like is an isolated person in the room looking at a screen. That's the reality of what's going on there, when you actually get out of the fictional world created through the ether, through the technology, and actually look at it with fresh eyes. You realize I'm just a person in a room, and but I grew up in the northwest of England, and just north of me is the Lake District, which is one of the most beautiful parts of it. I mean, England alone has so many beautiful parts of it, but I spent a lot of my time there, climbing to the peaks, climbing to see the world from that vantage point, and walking through the forests. And I've always been that person who does that, and you do get that sense, when you're at these peaks looking out at the vast creation in front of you, the sheer complexity and size of it all, and where you stand within it. And yes, it makes me feel small, but it doesn't at the same time. It connects me back to it and makes me realize that a God created this, and you can see the love in it all. You can see it, you know it when you look at it. And I think a lot of the agenda of this technology and the forcing of these technologies today is to make people not be in nature and not actually realize that, no, reality isn't your consciousness floating around in this meat flesh puppet staring at screens. That's not the intended purpose of your life. And I think if people would just unplug and go out for a walk, just simply go for a walk. And when was the last time you actually looked at the clouds? When was the last time you just took a moment to actually hold a leaf up to the sun and see what it actually looks like? When was the last time you appreciated an insect? And when you start to actually just stop and pay attention to the world around you, I'm not trying to get all woo and hippie here, I'm just saying it puts into perspective that, okay, that you have that one beautiful shining butterfly in front of you that you're looking at right now. Well, there's trillions of them, and never mind that. That's just one species of bug, and it's all happening all at once. and where, you know, there's things you cannot understand or comprehend. There are redwoods falling in forests with nobody around to see them.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of
Yeah.
everything's in motion and you're within it, you're a part of it, you know.
Mm.
And if you've limited your entire existence to a daily routine of eat, sleep, work, repeat, stare at screens, you're missing it. You know,
Yeah.
and in many ways I do feel like when you get to God, a part of it is reconnecting back to nature. You know, and not in a worshipping nature type of way, more in
Right.
a you can tell he exists through things which have been made. It's that type of situation. The evidence is a self-evident. I think that's Romans, isn't it? That's I can't remember the verse and chapter there, but I remember having that as a very. I think it was on my wall for a long time. I'm embarrassed. I can't remember the actual verse and chapter now, but it does say, you know, it's quite clear he exists through everything that's been made, and you just, you know,
Yes.
and being out in nature really does make it abundantly clear over and over
Yes.
again, especially when you go somewhere that does have a natural beauty to it, like a redwood forest or a peak district, you know, with lakes and things like that.
Mhm.
But that's my 2 cents on what you said there. Let's see if you've got anything else to say on it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, this promise that they're holding out to us, their version of eternal life, that's going to come through neural lace and, you know, technology and implants and upgrades and God knows what. But this singularity, this transhumanism, this eternal life that they're offering us, as you're painting this picture of leaving the outside world with all of its beauty and the handiwork of the designer behind it, and we're in our isolated little rooms with our goggles on and all that. Um, the the form of eternal life that they're offering us it's a zombie. You know, zombies of eternal life, right? 'Cause they come up from the grave, and so it really is a death cult, like you said. It's like your eternal life is a zombie life. You know, you get to come up from the grave and still look dead. And so, you know, I used to believe as a kid, God offers eternal life, and you either have eternal life or you die. But the fact is that they are offering a form of life, but it doesn't match the vacation brochure. You know, you you see the brochure and then you show up and realize like this is not what was pictured in the front of that vacation brochure.
Absolutely. I think the connection's maybe going just a little bit right now. I'm not sure why. It says it's okay on my end and everything's full
Okay.
speed and excellent. But for some reason, I think people are saying it's fading in and out. I think it just did fade in and out for me a little bit there. So
Okay.
I'm sorry if that cut out for anyone there. But maybe, you know, just to summarize this talk, we're coming up to the 2-hour mark now. You know, maybe we should bring it more back to a personal level. Just your own story, Vicky. You know, what was it for you exactly that got you into all of this? Because, you know, did you think you'd be this person? You know,
No, definitely not. You know, sometimes, Paul, one of my favorite lines in literature is from The Great Gatsby, and the main character, who's a beautiful woman, and she's married with a little daughter, and she's talking, you know, to the main character who's in love with her, but she wishes for her daughter, and she said, this isn't an exact quote, but she says, I wish for my daughter to be beautiful and stupid. And she's basically saying that, you know, um, if a woman has a lot of thought and depth, she's sort of a misfit in the world, right? And so I never would have wished this upon myself. I mean, I spend a lot of my time thinking about crazy things, but how I got to this place, really, and people probably aren't going to like this answer because it's not that I went to college and got a Bible degree and continued my education and, you know, was the daughter of a pastor or whatever. You know, we think that we somehow can strive to achieve these strange places that we get to. But I'm really to a place where I'm at because my entire childhood, I was in the hospital nonstop for the first 15 years of my life. And I would have surgeries, and a lot of it was isolating because my mom didn't drive. And she had my older brother that she had to be home taking care of and getting off to school. And my dad traveled for a living and had the only car. So not only was I in the hospital a lot, but I really didn't get a lot of visitors. So I had to learn to entertain myself. I had to learn to sit in a bed, and sometimes I couldn't see because, my face would be so swollen from the surgeries that a lot of times I couldn't see. My eyes were swollen shut or stitched shut or whatever. So I couldn't read or watch TV. And I had to learn, for the first 15 years of my life, I had to learn how to entertain myself in a bed where I couldn't really move and see. And I had to learn to not go crazy by being content with my own thoughts. And I did know the Lord from a very, very young age. And I did know that Jesus was present with me there in the hospital. And because of this extremely long crucible that taught me patience and how to function and survive in isolation and loneliness, I really learned how to speak all day long to God and to be in prayer and to converse with him back and forth. And through those first 15 years of my life, he proved himself faithful. And he proved himself to be a healer. He proved himself to be a companion. He proved himself to be a teacher. And you just don't walk hand in hand with someone for that long through the most difficult points in your life without there building a trust and a love. And so by the time I hit my teen years, which is kind of where all the peer pressure and all that garbage comes in, I was already in a completely different place in my mind. I had different priorities. I did not care what my peers thought of me. I didn't care if I was cool. I didn't care if I was popular. These are the kids that are bullying me and making fun of me. Why in the world do I want their approval? And there's a flip side to this, Paul, too. Like, obviously, there was a lot of damage done that I had to work through as well. And it just, because of the particular cross that God chose for me to bear, it just created this extremely bizarre personality. And I just want to tell anybody out there, whatever you're suffering through, we all go through some extremely devastating things in life that we don't ever think we can come back from. And I'm just here to tell you firsthand, not only can you come back from it, but you can actually, like Job, actually get to a place where you have 10 times returned to you what was lost. And that when we're in these crucibles, it's not always because we're being punished or because God doesn't like us or we sinned. Like, he might actually love you so much that he wants a dynamic personal relationship with you. And the only way in this distracted world we can really get to know the heart of God is when he puts us in situations where we have nowhere else to go and there's no distractions. And so where I'm at now in my faith and where I'm at now in my red-pilledness and being able to see things that are on the horizon is there was a huge, huge price tag for it, Paul. It was decades of loneliness and hurt and feeling like nobody wanted me except for God, And so I just really want to encourage people out there that we live in a society that is teaching and grooming children to revel in their brokenness and boast in their brokenness and take pride in their victimhood. And what I'm telling you is, all the crap you're going through right now, it's not so that you can get hits on your social media for how broken you are. It is because those are the crucibles where God develops character and prepares you for what he's called you to do. We got one shot down here. We don't have a lot of time. and we've got a lot of things that take us away from the work because life has many distractions, but we can get it right if he's walking with us, and just press on. I mean, just like it says in the New Testament, we have to press on towards the prize. We have to press on. We have to not weary in doing what is right. And we have to not fear man. And we have to not be afraid if the world hates us. We've got to just, life isn't something to just get through. Like, there is a glorious journey here. And it usually comes through some sort of identity crisis or some sort of suffering or some sort of trial. Do not shun the trials. Let patience have its perfect work. Let God do what he's trying to do. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. Just press on, brothers and sisters.
Thanks for sharing that, Vicki. That was a great story. A testimony, that was wonderful. And he certainly does feel like, I think a lot of people can empathize with what you were saying, that life does feel a bit like a trial by fire sometimes. Mm-hmm. Even from my own experiences, I didn't learn much from the good times, but I definitely grew from the hard times.
Yep.
And that is the way it is. And it's kind of an undeniable truth that I've learned personally, and then obviously you've learned yourself as well. Mm-hmm. And there is very much a culture today of accepting the worst in yourself as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Or
yes.
or accepting, boasting about how bad your life is. It's basically what I'm trying to say. It does feel very much as a competition of oppression. Olympics is another a common phrase for that. But that goes hand in hand with politics that we're not going to get into today. But even on a personal level, there is that. I define myself by my weaknesses. When you should be defining yourself by how you overcame that adversity. And
absolutely. I think it's okay to boast in your scars. Mm-hmm. But we're teaching people how to boast in their open wounds. And there's a difference. Boast in your scars, not the open wounds.
Exactly. Well, I think that might be a good place to leave it, Vicki. I think we've had a nice conversation here. I think there's plenty more we could talk about in the future, as there always is. And I think we definitely will get back in touch and do that. I hope everyone listening today has enjoyed this talk. Vicki, do you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, I'll just say if anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can get me at VickiJoyAnderson.com or on Instagram, Vicki Joy Author. I always love hearing from people, so feel free to get in touch.
Mm-hmm. I'll make sure. I think all your links are already in the description of this chat because I have them from our last talk, so I've copy-pasted them. I don't think anything's changed. Make sure to check Vicki out. She's on plenty of podcasts. She's doing the circuit. She's a known entity. You can easily find her work and obviously her book as well. And Vicki, I'll definitely have you back on in the future, and thanks for doing this.
Awesome. It's been great. Thank you so much, Paul.
No problem. And to everyone listening in the chat, as always, God bless.